And we're live, finally. Better late than never. This thing was slow today. I blame Russia and China and India. I'm running out of country, so we're just blaming someone other than me. All right, that's how this works, Nick.
It's Angola this month.
Oh, it's Angola this month. Why didn't I get the
Yeah.
memo? You know, it helps if I check my junk file.
I
All right.
forgot to hit send. It was logged up, ready to go. I forgot to pull the trigger. My bad.
Well, Katie's not here when we've got Derek, so we're going to blame Katie since she's not here to defend herself. Works for me.
That works. I thought you were going to blame me, so I was like,
well you're here, so that gets a little
let's
awkward.
blame Katie. Let's vote on it.
Yeah. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, if you're listening to our pre-show banter that we did before I read that lovely introduction, and you're a little bit confused and you found this episode first, we also interviewed him about his book that he co-wrote with Katie Cross. So, if you're confused, listen to that one too, because, it's worth it.
It'll all make so much sense.
But in case those weird people that, have social lives and things didn't listen to that episode, Derek, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
For sure. So my name is Derek Siddoway. I write under my full name, Derek Allen Siddoway. I write fast-paced epic fantasy. Sometimes I say fast-paced epic fantasy with heart, but we cover that in the last episode. So if you want to know about the heart, you can go check that out. But basically that means all that stuff that you love about epic fantasy, the world building and the grand scale, combined with kind of a turn the page, can't put the book down pacing, and also underdog characters that you want to root for, even if you don't necessarily like all of them.
That's cool. It's fun not to like things too.
No, it's never fun not to like stuff. What are you saying?
Like I hate the Jedi.
It doesn't even make any sense, man.
Yes, it does. I hate the Jedi because the Empire was right. It's all about peace and stability, man.
So it's fun to hate things now? I do not like this timeline.
Well, they're rebel scum. They're rebel scum. It doesn't count.
They're freedom fighters.
I think it's in vogue to hate things now. Maybe not fun, but it's popular.
I'm a big fan of the meme that just is always, shh, let people enjoy things.
Right?
I mean, I don't care if you enjoy it. You could be wrong. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, just as long as it's not hurting anybody. Whatever blows your hair back, I'm cool with it.
Oh, hair, I miss you so. So the next part of the introduction. The next part of the introduction is how we first found them. So I met Derek through the lovely Katie Cross, who we interviewed about their book together called A Spring for Spears. The aforementioned episode you should listen to as well. The book was amazing. I read it, wrote a review for it over on Upstream Reviews, also linked in the show note of that episode. But he mentioned his book, Beast Something. We don't want to spoil it, so we're going to build a suspense, but there were animals involved that eat people's faces. So Nick was like, ooh, eating faces. I'm here. Give me some bath salts and a good Coke.
You're not going to fool the listeners because they know I don't drink Coke. I drink bourbon.
Oh, I actually was talking about the other kind of Coke, but I mean, sure, we'll go with Coca-Cola.
I haven't done that since the 90s, and we promised we would never talk about that on air.
I think you can use
man, I didn't get the memo for that. Did you hit send on that memo?
No, I don't think I might have been high on Coke when I sent
it. All right, Nick, ask him the religion questions. See if he passes round two.
I don't know. Let me go to screen number 2 where I have the Bible opened. Out of the religion question. Stargate, Battlestar Galactica, or Babylon 5?
I wasn't prepared for this. Last time I had a different religion question.
We change it up every time.
My answer last time was pretty bad, but my answer this time is going to be worse because I'm going to have to go with D, none of the above.
What? Okay, what is your favorite that you haven't told us yet?
You can't do that. Can you do that?
Yeah, it's in the bylaws, subsection 12.
I've never watched any of those, so it's not that I dislike them. It's just that I am completely, I guess you could say, agnostic to all of the above.
To be honest with you, Derek, I ain't seen one of them things. I've seen the movie Stargate. I watched the old Battlestar Galactica. And
I watched Stargate in the theaters.
Yeah, me too.
Good one.
That's like Desert Aliens? I'm in.
Isn't that Dune? I'm not
exactly.
very well versed.
I'm a huge fan of Dune. So,
I I saw Dune with some buddies. I haven't read the book. That's probably another sin. But my big takeaway, I saw it in IMAX, and I was just like, there was just so much bass. That was all I took away from that movie. Is I'm like, my eardrums will never be the same.
The director's cut for the OG 84 version was like 4.5, 5 hours long.
Ooh.
And it covered maybe 30% of what's in the book.
That's brutal. I mean,
The
my
book's
wife's
amazing.
an
You won't go
extended
wrong.
edition fan of Lord of the
Read it.
Rings and believes those are the only ones you can watch. And I can get behind that, but I don't know. You creep into the 4-hour realm and you start losing me,
You need an intermission.
right? Like an hour-long intermission.
Yeah, let's go out to the lobby. You know, for those that remember that in movies back in the day at the theater, if it was, because there was a few movies out there that were over the 2-hour mark, and that was considered long. And right around an hour 15, they would give you a 20-minute intermission. Back in my day, when movies cost 25 cents, you know.
I feel you.
Yeah, long movie. Anyway, on to the second part of the religion question, because we're polytheistic.
After we had our intermission.
After we had an intermission of
And
me
we're
talking
back.
like old man Nick, and we're back, sort of, kind of, I don't know. Beastmaster, Red Sonja, or the Sword and the Sorcerer.
You know, this is gonna sound terrible. I contemplating reading Beastmaster when I was doing my research for Beast Mage, the name of my book. I did not get to it, so again, I'm gonna have to say none of the above and hope that.
Told you, JR. I told you I should
have.
have bet money. I was like, I don't know, man. These movies are kind of old, dude. I don't think he's ever seen them. They're like
I have heard of them.
They're
That's
good.
that's
You
my
old
good thing.
people, I've heard about your ancient things.
And Red Sonja, it's a backdoor sequel to Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
I was going
Schwarzenegger's
somewhere
in
else
it.
with that statement, but yeah, sure. Sequel.
Yeah, or backdoor spinoff. I don't know. It's a good movie. I liked it, and it was the 80s, and we were all high on coke. And I was like 8, so.
I mean, you were just an overachiever, so you
I
started early.
That means if it was the 80s, you were high on New Coke, right?
Yes, New Coke.
Okay.
Which didn't
all
taste
right.
the same as Coke Classic, but, it is what it is. Well, we here at the Blaster and Blades podcast, get it together, like both the fantastical and the scientific. What do you think your first love was? Was sci-fi or fantasy? And forgive me if we asked you in a previous interview.
We did. I'm pretty sure I said sci-fi. I think going back, it'd be a close tie between the original Star Wars, but also one that comes to mind. I think I mentioned this last time was, Disney's Sword in the Stone. That was a pretty early one. Grew up on a lot of, probably preceded both of those, a lot of Westerns though. So that kind of
Louis L'Amour.
Oh, well.
No, mostly John Wayne movies. I haven't read a ton of Westerns, but yeah, I watched the full suite of John Wayne growing up.
Well, if I
What
knew
about
that,
Lone
I
Ranger?
would. Oh, you're embarrassing yourself. John Wayne. Are we talking Red
No,
River?
I know The Lone Ranger wasn't John Wayne. I was asking as a transitionary Western iconic show that has also been remade.
Yeah, I like the classics. Had I known, I would have come up with Western questions for you to choose from.
Oh, we'll have to do this again, and we'll just take
Absolutely.
a complete segue, and it will be Blasters and Blades, but we will talk about Westerns just because.
Space Westerns are a thing. We'll do a panel. You're invited back. We're good.
All right.
The Mandalorian is a space Western, at least season 1 was.
Oh, totally.
So you can merge those things easy. So now Star Wars is already science fiction and fantasy. You throw in The Mandalorian, it covered Western, science fiction, and fantasy.
And the reason we asked these, even though he was interviewed not that long ago, it'll be a month and a half, I think, since the last one when this airs, is because sometimes memory is a fickle thing, and you ask me the same question any given day, and I'll give you a different answer every time, because memory works that way when you're put on the spot. So, what was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction? Do you remember where you found your love of the genre?
Geez, I'm taking a trip down memory lane here in my head.
Take our hands, take us with you.
Right. like I said, honestly, I can't remember the first time I watched Star Wars. I'm old enough that we used to watch a lot of things on network TV and they just came on, and sometimes you turned them on and you were halfway through the show and you couldn't rewind it to see the start of it. So I would assume my first exposure was probably way back in those ancient days of yore when something popped on,
And you were grateful for it.
The late
Disney
1900s.
movie. I was thinking about this the other day. I just got back from Disney World actually, and was thinking about my favorite Disney movies and things like that, and most of them involve some kind of medieval element. Mulan came along a little bit later, but it's like, hey, sweet, Huns and swords, that's pretty cool, and miniature dragon. So I like I said, I can't remember, but I would say it would have to be the ones I gravitated to early on were probably the original Star Wars, or it would have been one of those animated movies, whether it was Disney or something else.
Every time I'm at Disney World or Disneyland, I have to go and try and pull the sword out of the stone.
Right? Just in case.
Just in case. One of these days,
well, when you're in Florida,
king.
If you find a crocodile with a sword in its head and you pull it out, you will become the Lord of Florida.
No,
so it's foretold.
You become king
I'd
of the
probably
Glades.
pass on that one. Nothing against Florida, but
there is a alligator rolling around there that has a machete stuck in its head and it's still alive.
There's gotta be.
No, there's pictures.
They've got
of
pictures.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
They got pictures of it.
A
Yeah.
real thing. All right.
And they made a meme out of it and said, whoever retrieves the machete from the skull will be Lord of the Glades. So yeah, I'll be on the.
And it's not so much that Florida has any more weird people than anywhere else, but their sunshine laws make the information that much more accessible. So if you break the law in Florida, you're just more likely to everyone be able to point and laugh at you.
Right. So I just my wife is a huge Percy Jackson fan.
Excellent books.
And I finally listened to all the audio books just recently. And speaking of Florida, like this just popped into my head while we're talking about it. It was so fitting to me that like the centaurs in the Percy Jackson universe, right? They're all kind of party animals, party horse human guys, but they're totally based in Florida. And that's like the most, like if there were party centaurs somewhere in America, they would live in Florida. That was just
with a trucker hat, a fishing hook on the bill. Absolutely.
I could see it. So what is it about the broader umbrella that is speculative fiction that you love so much?
I think it's just it's cool to read stories about heroes and villains and magic and things, but I think it's kind of the step beyond that when whether you're watching a really great speculative fiction movie, in any of the genres, or the same with reading a book. It's kind of when you finish it or as you're reading it, and your brain kind of starts spinning and you start thinking about other things that could take place in that world. Kind of just how it, it's like throwing gasoline on the fire of your imagination, basically, right? Where you read these cool stories and you just experience all these different scenarios and characters and things that other authors create. And I think you just kind of feed on that. And that's the same with, I would say with video games in the genre as well, right? It's just, it makes you think what if, or what else could happen here, or what if this was different. And I think that plays a lot into why many of us become writers is, we go from daydreaming about that to actually wanting to write it down. But it's just really cool to explore different places and to be able to experience those things, and also to build upon it, even if it's just in your, head, or if it's headcanon to those different worlds.
Yeah. I think that's the mark of a good story. If when the story ended, I didn't want it to end, so I inserted myself in to keep the storyline going. That's how you know. And hopefully, the books or the comics we write, like people will do the same thing. Because that's, to me, that's how you know you've won. Like you're living rent free in their head, so to speak.
Yep,
for sure.
Yeah, you sparked the fire of imagination. That's going to just carry on. Like before Shadows of the Empire, the book ever got written, I had stories in my head what happened between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and I put Luke and Leia and Lando and Han and all them on just fantastic adventures trying to recover Han Solo.
And so that brings up a good point, Nick. Is another one of my really early memories that definitely influenced my love of fantasy and some of my writing was playing Warcraft 2 on one of my cousin's computers, right? I was definitely not old enough to meet the rating for that. And I can tell you that is a game my parents would have definitely not bought me.
Oh, absolutely.
But, going over to my cousin's house and playing the old real-time strategy version of Warcraft, back in the old days before it was an MMORPG, that was another big influence on me. Was that early game. And also when you said Shadows of the Empire, I thought about that game. I think it was the game with the same name too.
Yeah, they made a game.
That was another great one that influenced me from a pretty young age as well.
Remember me and my mom getting into a huge argument about me trying to put that game on the PC or the home PC because it needed 8 megabytes of RAM and it was going to eat up everything.
Right.
That's how old I am. And now I've got, I look back and I'm like, it was such a stupid argument, especially compared to today's technology.
Like this phone could run 10,000 programs from the 90s that our poor computers were overheating trying to process.
This is like 1,000 times more processing speed than what they had to put a man on the moon.
Right.
And all those computers ate up a whole building, multiple floors of computing power. And we walk around with this, and that turned into a plot of a movie called Iron Sky. And if you haven't watched it, you need to watch it because it is so bad. It's awesome.
And we use it to look up memes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, memes are a love language. All right, people. They're like modern day hieroglyphics.
They're the limericks of our time.
They are. There's something poetic about a good, well-timed, well-placed meme.
It's the sex love language, right?
It is. It should be on there. But how did your love of speculative fiction as a genre and the storytelling therein, how did that transition into you writing your own stories and sharing them with the world?
I think a lot of it started from, again, that kind of headcanon and just imagination where, you think of other stories and things that you wanted to take place. I think I shared this last time, but for me, the earliest thing that I can remember writing of my own free will just for fun was Pokemon fan fiction. But it wasn't even it was like me rewriting someone else's Pokemon fan fiction that I was like, oh, I didn't like how they did this. So it was like fan fiction inception, right? Where I'm rewriting someone else's and rewriting it again. But I just remember, going back to the days of just past whatever the first internet was, past dial-up, right? Where you're not on dial-up, but your internet's like, wow, I'm going to take 5 minutes to load this page. I just remember, when I found Pokemon fan fiction on the internet at a young age and, growing up and being part of that, the mania around Pokemon, that was a really, aside from all the books, I read a ton growing up and in that same time frame, but also just reading a lot of other people's stories was a big influence on me. And just, I'm sure, I never realized at the time, or I haven't thought about it too much, but I'm sure there was an influence in seeing that, there's all these just regular people that aren't quote unquote, authors that are writing this stuff. And I'm sure that played an influence later on, especially considering that the vast majority of the books I published have been, self-published as an independent author. So that was a little bit of a segue again, but.
Well, it kind of goes right into our next question, because many authors draw from their life experiences or experiences that they've had. Were there any specific moments in your life that shaped you as a storyteller?
Going back again to, talking a little bit about Warcraft 2, I think that's something that specifically the Griffin Riders that were a unit in the Alliance, that's something that really inspired my not surprisingly titled Griffin Riders trilogy that I wrote a few years ago. Actually, it's been, almost 6 years since the first book for that came out. But that was something, and just, I didn't read Tolkien, The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings until I was probably, 12 or so. And so, I mean, by that point, I had been exposed to Star Wars, like I said, Warcraft, a lot of Westerns. And then, Chronicles of Narnia was before that. Chronicles of Prydain was before that. That's kind of a dark horse book or series that a lot of people don't mention, but that was a big influence on me. So, Yeah, just all of those kind of classic, they're classics. Some people might call them YA now, but I think they're really, at the time, they were written just for a general audience. They weren't really YA. A lot of
Yeah.
those stories kind of inspired me and first kindled my imagination starting out.
Yeah, I was probably about 13, 14 when I read Tolkien too. So like drawing back to what you just said, that seems to be like a standard age now. Not all of us are the Winter Soldier who read it in 1937 when it first came out.
Right.
So, we discover these things later in life because somebody's older brother read it like, oh, if you're really into fantasy, dude, you got to check this out.
Right.
And that's how you get into it. But let's transition away from the writing side. Let's talk about things from a fan angle. We asked about your fandom experiences during your interview with Katie. If you haven't listened to that episode, what are you doing with your life? Obviously, you should go back and check that out. But, roll the dice. Maybe this interview popped up first for you. But for a slice of something different, what is your favorite memory of a fan interaction?
I'm trying not to reuse all my answers, but I used all my good ones last time. So, and obviously for the people that don't listen to both, but you should still go listen to the other one.
Absolutely.
It was just really cool. I did my first con as an author last year. We just Katie and I had a table there. So we weren't speaking or part of any panels. We just kind of had a table in the vendor area. And, I don't do a lot of local stuff, I guess you could say. Like I've never done a book signing locally. I don't push a lot of, I don't market locally really, right? Like I know there are a lot of people from Utah that have read my books and that I've talked to via email and things. But again, that was my first con overall, and really the first big thing I'd ever done in person in the States. So it was cool just to see the number of people that came up and they're like, oh, I've read that book, or I've read this book, right? And they knew. And then especially I just earlier, so FanX in Salt Lake was in September, and earlier that March I'd done a Kickstarter for Beast Mage for this book. And there was probably almost half a dozen people that came up that were like, oh, I backed a Kickstarter for that. And I just thought that was super cool that, out of the wide world of the internets, right, the World Wide Web, that there was that many people locally that had found my book and enjoyed it. And it was just really cool to talk to them and to be able to thank them in person for backing a Kickstarter, especially since, one, it was my first Kickstarter, two, it was for a new series. And obviously my current readership there was a lot of great support from them, and I really appreciated that. But there were just a lot of people that was their first interaction with me or from me at all, was supporting that Kickstarter. And that was really cool to meet a couple of those people in person and be able to thank them and just kind of talk about how that had been a success and thank them again for their support.
Now, you mentioned you did a con stateside. Have you done anything internationally, like Canada, Mexico, anything like
that? No, that was first in general. Just
overall. Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that. I'm like, ooh, this is a good segue question. Hopefully he's had some, international man of mystery type adventures.
I would absolutely love to go to. I'm drawing a blank on the names. I know there's a couple of big cons in Canada, and there's obviously a couple big ones in the UK that, yeah, I'd absolutely love to go to someday. I should give a shout out to, I have a number of fans in Australia. Just want to give them a shout out for their support in general, because it's a long way across the water, and I would love to, if I ever go there just to visit, to drop a line and say, hey, I'm going to take 2 hours and this is where I'll be hanging out. I'd love to meet you.
Oh, that'd be so sweet. That would be awesome. All right, let's talk about everything about Derek and everything that you've written, because, this is what we're here for. Can you give us like a Reader's Digest highlights reel of your body of work? I think you did it last time, but just as a refresher for anybody who's finding this podcast first before that previous interview.
It's been 6 weeks. He could have put out 10 novels by now.
That's true. You guys are so fast. That's probably what people say when I'm drawing too. Put it out so fast. I'm like, I really don't.
But anyway, write/draw, whichever it is.
Yeah.
I wish I had put a book out between now and then. I'm actually working on the sequel to Spring for Spears, so I wish that one was done. But anyway, I started out, and I don't push this too much because I'm going to end up going back and revisiting the series. But my Tudavar Saga series was the first thing I published. Released the first book in that series, followed it up with the sequel. And then I did a novella actually that was a prequel. So there's technically 3 books out in the series, what I call like book 0, and then book 1 and book 2. And then I jumped ship from that to do the Griffin Riders trilogy. And that was all kind of an experiment to see, one, if I could take that was really when the whole, for indie authors, you guys right remember, that was when the whole right to market trend kind of first came out, and it was first a big deal, right? And so I wrote Griffin Riders 1 as kind of a love letter to those original real-time strategy games I played, like Age of Empires or especially World of Warcraft.
God, I love that game so damn much.
Age of Empires?
Oh yeah,
dude.
hours upon hours of my life that I'll never get back, and I don't want it back.
We need to do. I would totally come back just to do an entire show where all we do is talk about Age of Empires. That would be so
especially
awesome.
when you get frustrated and you get the because I was playing on PC, get the cheat codes, and actually, my Roman Legion has like MG42s, just
right, and you're just, or you get the sports car that has a machine gun and just mow everything.
Yeah, it just goes over there and takes out everybody else.
Exactly.
Like, I don't even care if it's cheating. This is so damn fun.
That's
the memes that come out of that, where you get the Roman Legionnaires behind a machine gun. It's like when you perfect the cheat codes.
Because that came out when I was in college, and oh my god, Friday night and Saturday.
Did you guys do the LAN parties with the games? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we sure did. Because I had this open concept, like 800 square foot shoebox of an apartment, but most of it was kitchen going into the living room. So I kicked my ex-wife. Well, she was my wife at the time, but ex-wife. I'm like, hey, don't you got something you can do with your girlfriends for about, I don't know, 8 hours? It is 6 o'clock at night, Nicholas. I'm like, I know, the boys are coming over, and Fridays for the boys, playing Age of Empires. She goes, you guys are nerds. And I'm like, yes, we are. Please leave.
Maybe that's why she's an ex. She's like, I can't compete with this. It's civilization.
You can't.
All right, so that all sounds fascinating, but we're going to dig into the novel that brought us here. But before we do that, we're going to shamelessly show for the man, or in this case, the woman, and I'm going to play that commercial.
In a world where magic is controlled by law and government, mages are both coddled and persecuted. Corey Monroe knows she isn't a mage, and her best friend is. Reality isn't always what you know. If you are looking for an urban fantasy with found family, an education-based magic system, and evolving storylines, try My Luck by Mel Todd, book 1 in the Twisted Luck series, available exclusively on Amazon.
All right, thank you, Mel, and thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude.
Is that her new book?
No, that's her. Well, she's got new books out in the series.
Oh, okay. I was like, man, I missed
so it's her urban fantasy, although urban fantasy and paranormal, I don't know. I get all that mixed up. It's fantasy with modern world. One of these days we'll do a discussion where we figure out what exactly all that stuff is, but I bet if we asked 10 people, we'd get 11 answers.
Oh, always.
So thank you for sticking with us, but we'll get back to you, Mr. Derek. Can you tell us where you got the idea for Beast Mage? Was it psychedelics, too much Utah air? I don't know,
Elevation.
Expired Coke or whatever you guys do in Utah for fun. I don't know.
Right.
It's hot and flat, right? Like, what all do you guys have?
What all, this is funny. I didn't realize that Utah was becoming nationally known for this, but I've heard a couple of podcasts talk about like the vast number of dirty soda shops that you can go to. And if you don't know what a dirty soda is, it's like, let's take Dr. Pepper and add grenadine to it and cream. But apparently, like, you come to Utah and now that's a thing. So I guess that's our latest thing, right? It's the dry state. So we do whatever we can.
In Utah, and fry sauce. For some, I've read fry sauce was in Utah.
Yeah, you got to have fry sauce.
Yeah, and I fell in love. And I was like,
well, there's Utah is obviously known for their Mormons, or what I guess LDS now. They renamed themselves. And there's a decent number of those folks of that tribe that are in the sci-fi space writing. So they're starting to get a reputation as Utah as a sci-fi state.
That's true. There are, I don't know There are a lot of authors in Utah. Obviously, we have, Emperor Brandon Sanderson that's ruling over all of us as the supreme overlord that no one will ever get close enough to touch. But there are a lot of authors in Utah, and I have no idea exactly. We could dive into the psychology and culture of why that is, but it is pretty cool. I've been to a couple like writers conferences and things in the state, and it's a really supportive and engaged community here.
So, do you have to pay a tithe when every one of your books comes out to Lord Sanderson himself?
Yes, specifically to him, right?
Okay, I thought that's how
We
that
have to
worked in
drive
fantasy
down
days.
and drop it off in front of his villain cave. Now that that he built that during the pandemic, if you read that story, you can't. It's
Yeah.
not electronic. Like you actually have to put it in front of the throne.
Wow. So, I mean, it's worse things to be known for over there in Utah because you could be Ohio, where it's got more people that hated the state so much they left the planet. Because Ohio has the most number of astronauts. They're like, this place sucks so much. I don't even want to be on the same planet as this state.
That's
I'm
right.
peacing out. Clearly, they've
That's
never been to
fair.
some of the other places.
Yeah, I can't complain. And whatever it may be that's causing all the creative and imaginative bursts here, I guess we'll take it, right. But I'm trying to get back to the question now. Where did Beast Mage come from? So Beast Mage was an idea I had. It's kind of one of those shiny distractions you get as an author when you're like partway through another series and you're like, oh, it'd be really cool to write this. And now I'm totally obsessed with writing that. But I finished the current series I was working on at the time, which was Gin Tamer. It's another kind of magical companion inspired series, more based on Pokemon. But Beast Mage came from my love of Digimon. So growing up, the Saturday morning cartoons on Fox, we watched a lot of Digimon back in the day. And obviously I've already mentioned I was part of the Pokemon craze, but then also just kind of exploring a love and a fascination and almost a hobby, you could say, I've generated later on in life for just exploring and understanding some of the cultures of pre-Columbian, North America and Central America, and kind of meshing the two ideas together. So you have elemental magic, you have beast companions that are magical and can, change forms and do cool things. And then mashing that up with a world based on kind of a pre-Columbian America and some of the really amazing civilizations, being inspired by some of those civilizations and kind of putting my own spin on them and what that world would look like. And then of course, the kind of portal fantasy element and that kind of trope that I think a lot of us go back to, whether we're writers or just lovers of speculative fiction, is what would happen if I got dropped into this world and how I would react. So my reaction to that was to make my main character a 19-year-old dairy farm boy from Idaho who gets dropped into this completely strange world and has to find his sister and kind of deal with that. So kind of tying all those themes together, a lot of, again, there was the Digimon element, but also some of those adventure stories like Hatchet or My Side of the Mountain. I think there's definitely some of that flavor in as well.
Okay. So before we get started, where we talk about Beastmaster, that's Beast Mage, excuse me. That's the origin story for the series, for the book and the series. But what would the age range be for this universe?
I really, in everything I write, I would say it kind of has a PG-13 rating. Really, I'm not, as we mentioned in the last podcast, and you can ask Katie, I'm not a big romance guy as far as writing it. So I rely on her skills with that whenever we need romance in our shared books. But, honestly, it's mostly a kind of a PG setting for most of my books, other than, some of the violence might creep into the PG-13 range. Really not a lot of language, just kind of a lot of cool action and fight scenes. And that's really where things would get pushed over as well. Like I said, a lot of my inspiration goes back to some of those classics that may be called in our modern era YA, but really they're kind of for all audiences, right? And I think you can read them as an adult and appreciate them And if you put them on the big screen, obviously there's still some action and fighting and a lot of cool stuff and people doing magic and people battling and things like that. But it's still accessible for really anyone, I would say. Advanced readers maybe over the age of 10, but definitely anyone 12 and older. But still geared toward an audience, I think, of adults as well too, right? There's definitely some themes where Kellen in searching for his little sister is kind of making definitely some more mature choices and adult choices. And it's kind of despite that PG-13 rating, it's kind of a dangerous world, the world of Oris, where Beast Mage is set. There's a lot of warring factions and tribes. There's a lot of just magic and danger from the natural environment too. So it's not like a soft, squishy, nice place to want to live, even if it would be really cool and wonderful to take a vacation there. It's maybe a little bit like Pandora, where you're not so sure you'd want to live there full time. You just might want to visit.
Yeah, we're getting ready to watch that after this interview.
All right, Nick. The next question is you. So you got to put your gin and tonic down. Okay, I don't know if you actually drink gin and tonic.
What am I?
Do people still drink that?
I do on occasion during the summer. That is a very refreshing drink, or a mint julep, or a mojito, or we'll be here all night talking about drinks that I like to make during the summer. But
all right,
my
let's move
second
on.
favorite thing is cover art. So
all right, let me put that cover art up there. It's a beauty.
Yeah,
I'll do better with transitions. I promise. I could do better.
There it is.
Oh, poncho! I love ponchos.
There was definitely. Oh, sorry, I cut you off, JR. I jumped into it too fast.
Yeah, that's cool. Shoulder pauldron. It's got a gauntlet. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool stuff.
There was a lot of artistic license in this, which I mean that in a very good way. Basically, my only direction for the cover designer was, okay, it's got to have a South American inspired-ish temple in the background, which you can kind of see there. I gave some pretty good direction on Vex, which is the creature you can see there, Kellen's companion. Then Kellen, the main character, the first couple versions, the first drafts, I have some of the rough sketches. It was very European fantasy or kind of traditional epic fantasy sword and sorcery. Like he had a cloak on with a hood, and it looked really great. But I'm like,
but it's boring. It's old.
Right. I'm like, that's not my setting, right? Like he has a poncho on because, that kind of fits in with the world I've created. And, I think it gives him, maybe dare I say, a little bit of kind of a young Clint Eastwood vibe there. Just kind of like a, High Plains Drifter kind of feel that I wanted to go for, right? Where it's this isn't a retelling of something that happened in England. Like we're not going to find the nice little shire with hobbit holes, which I love. Nothing wrong with that, but this is definitely a different world, and I really wanted to set the tone for that right away with the cover.
Yeah, with the poncho, like if I was walking to a bookstore and saw that, because I'm a big fan of Jedi Fallen Order, and he's got like Cal Kestis vibes going on right now. And if you haven't played that game, play it after the podcast because you don't want to miss this.
I just started it, the first one, so I'm like a whole game behind, but I'm probably 2 hours into the first one, and yeah, I really there's a lot of things. Obviously, having not played it before I wrote this book, there's definitely some things that there are some similarities there, but I'm really excited to check.
Well, I think the game designers and the creators of that game had kind of the same thought process that you did. Like, we don't want it to be like Star Wars, where it is almost like Europe. You got bad guys in cloaks and good guys in brown cloaks, and it's like, I want a poncho. I want that Clint Eastwood look. I want that High Plains Drifter.
Right.
I want that charismatic rogue that is learning about his place in the world or the universe or whatever. So no, as a cover, I think it's amazing. All the elements are there that make it interesting. So I mean, yeah, you got a center figured character who looks something familiar yet alien, distant, different, and then you got this cool ass cat looking thing, and he's glowing and stuff, and that's cool. And then the background itself, the civilizations. So yeah, it does have, like, I guess that is called Mesoamerican. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So I think that's really awesome too. As a cover, if I was just walking by, I'd be like, oh, what's this? And then that leads to the next part. Read the back. And then now I'm buying it. So yeah, it's a good cover.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really love it. And yeah,
Who's the artist?
Oh, what's that?
Who is the artist?
Oh, I feel terrible right now because I'm totally drawing a blank on it.
I
I
hate
will
putting you on
look
the
it
spot
up
with that.
before we can continue talking, but I'm committed now to give them a shout out before we finish the episode.
That way we can throw it in the show notes. Let's get the artist some work too.
Not too
that's a
much
great
because
cover.
I want more of these awesome covers, but yeah, definitely want to give some props.
That's always the balance. Like you want to throw some love at your artists, right? Like they do great work, but like, man, you want them free for you.
Absolutely. That's why you contract them.
That's like the crux, or maybe that's not the right word, but especially in the indie spaces, there's so many talented artists out there and narrators, and it's like you want to help them and support them and get their word out, and then all of a sudden they're like, man, I'm booked up for like 8 months. And you're like, but I love you and I need to work with you.
Remember who gave you your shot, buddy?
Got it. So cover artist name is Billy Christian. He's done some work, and I think it's a shop now, but I mean, regardless, like they produce some amazing stuff, and he's kind of the headline artist there. He's done some stuff for Magic the Gathering, some Final Fantasy stuff.
That tracks.
So yeah,
he's got that fantasy world down. That tone. Yeah, very good, very good. All right, now that we've enjoyed the cover. I love looking at covers. That's my favorite part of the show, besides meeting new people. Let's move on to the book itself. What would your 30-second elevator pitch be for this book?
So kind of explained it, but to wrap it all up and, put it in a tiny, a better bow or a better package. That we're on the 2nd floor, going to the 5th floor of the elevator. Really, it's a young man who gets transported to a strange kind of foreign planet in search of his sister, who also disappears there. And along the way, he has these elemental powers that are awakened with him, and he kind of bonds with this magical beast companion and uses these new powers and kind of grows in confidence in himself as he's searching for his sister in this strange world with all sorts of crazy flora and fauna and warring tribes.
Okay. All right, cool. And having said that, what makes your series special? What do you think it separates it from? Well, I don't think there's anything else out there like that right now that I've heard of, but I don't read a lot. But tell me about what makes your series special.
I think there's kind of really 3 things. The first is just the I call it the monster taming genre, which isn't really even a subgenre. It's kind of a very niche thing where there's not a lot of us writing in it. But I think for fans of, whether it's Pokemon or Digimon or Monster Rancher or just any of kind of those games in those vein, I think that there's people who enjoyed those games or the trading card game or the anime or whatever it would be. There's not a lot of books out there that kind of have those similar themes and tropes, which I think that's one that mine does. The second thing is that just kind of the mashup I talked about in the setting, right? It's not your typical medieval Europe setting. I really tried to, I did a lot of research for this book, not to copy anything from the ancient civilizations and cultures of North America and Central America and South America, those pre-Columbian cultures.
You say it was more influence driven in your research?
Right, influence. And that was my goal. I didn't want to copy and paste anything, but I definitely wanted that tone and flavor while also being, respectful of those cultures and just trying to understand how regular life worked there and get beyond kind of the things you learn in your 6th grade history book, right? And then the third thing would be the protagonist, which I think is kind of a dividing point for people that read the series. It's in that it's also in that progression fantasy subgenre, which really focuses on characters leveling up and getting stronger and learning new abilities and having kind of tracked and measurable progress and ascension of their power. But Kellen was a character that kind of the first concept when I wanted to write this book, aside from the cool world and the magic, and that was that I wanted Kellen to portray a realistic. I wanted him to be a realistic portrayal of what a regular average dude who, you know, is kind of shy, and, you know, he just graduated high school, and he's not a dude with a plan, right? Doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, right? Kind of like, you know, how Harry Potter is in the first half of that series, right? And I wanted to portray someone like that, who ends up in a completely new world, is totally out of his depth, right? And doesn't just suddenly embrace this, and doesn't suddenly become, you know, he's not the chosen one. He's not someone who just forgets about his old life. Like, you know, he's searching for his sister, and he's trying to find a way home, but he also has to embrace the realities of kind of this deadly, dangerous world that he lives in, and these new powers that he has, and really exploring how someone that's, you know, almost like a younger Bilbo Baggins in some ways, that gets thrust into this setting, what he would do, as opposed to kind of the cookie cutter main character that never looks back and just takes everything in stride and never thinks about, I'm in a different world, and how is that playing with my mind, right? And what's going on with me.
So he becomes the reluctant hero.
Right.
It's like he's just thrust in this situation. He's just like, well, I'm just going to have to deal with it, I guess, but I probably should learn some stuff, you know?
Well, one of the things that it does, though, is it instantly makes the character more likable, because family matters, right? Like in this world where we devalue everything every day and nothing really matters, and everything is, I hate this, and let's hate things together, like we mentioned earlier. Like, to see someone to just lay it all on the line for family, that's commendable, and you don't see enough of that in the modern world. You
really don't.
And I really, since I was kind of writing this for that progression fantasy subgenre audience, you know, that was one of my target audiences, I was really unsure how it was going to be accepted. And I think it has been divisive, right? Where people read the book and they're like, I didn't like Kellen, or people read the book and they're like, yeah, that's like a real person in that situation, right? And so to me, that told me that I did something right, that there was like a clear division between people love the character, or they were like, oh, I can't stand this guy because he's not overpowered and running around just, you know, getting all the girls and just shooting things with all his magical abilities and stuff. So to me, that meant that it was a success, even if it maybe wasn't 100% perfect fit for that genre. But I think I nailed the character and what I was going for. And I think to me, the people that didn't really love him, that's fine to me, as long as they recognize that he was realistic in some ways and that he was kind of genuine, right? And that's what I was going for.
That's good. Would you live in the world that you put him in?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I mean, so we're talking about a world where, you know, not any spoilers here, but just some of the stuff that Kellen encounters. Like, you know, there's a gigantic grizzly bear with like crystals coming out of its back that's the size of a dump truck, right? And it's
count me out.
Other than that, it's just like a bear.
I
it's just
dated
bigger
her
and
in high
angrier
school.
and has some magical powers. And then there's, you know, gigantic stampedes of bison, you know, buffalo, except that they're, you know, their hooves are on fire, so they're like literally making a giant wildfire on the version of the Great Plains in this world. And there's tornadoes and magical storms. I would say it would be pretty cool again to visit, like, especially if you got like the tamed version of it. But living there, and that's something I've always wanted this to portray, was that it is a harsh world, right? But there's still beauty in it, and there's still a lot of amazing and cool things. But it's meant to be a really tough place. And kind of a testing fire for Kellen. So long story short, I mean, if it was either live there or not, like if I can't just use the scapegoat or the cop-out answer of being like, yeah, I'd go on vacation there for a week, I think I'd have to pass it up.
Go to Florida.
Right? It's close enough. Like, I mean, if you did get the magical powers and, you know, you did have a super awesome animal companion that could change shape and do cool things too, you know, that would be different. And I just to kind of, I guess, maybe take this full circle, or my short answer is no, but that was kind of what I played with in the whole book, right? Is that Kellen's not just someone he's not an orphan. He has ties at home, right? He has a family at home. He has a little sister that's somewhere in this world that he's trying to find. So I didn't want the character to be someone who could just show up here and be like, oh, well, I have no reason to go back to Earth. I can just fully embrace my life, right? Like I wanted that clear division between him having something at home to miss, but also something here that he was searching for, to make his life a little harder and his decisions a little bit harder.
But it also added gravitas to it. Like if none of the decisions mattered, if the consequences aren't there, then what's it all matter? That's one of the things I call it, like the G.I. Joe syndrome you'll see in some of the middle sci-fi, for instance, where at the end of the episode, as it were, the end of the book, everybody's laughing. They went a few places, killed a few things, lost a few friends, and then they reset like nothing happened. That just doesn't ring true. So I think adding that, the stakes, as it were, like I think that's what makes the world better and more vibrant.
For sure. Yeah. I wanted there to be like I said, he's definitely an underdog. I want you to root for him, but also like understanding that there are consequences to choices, and there's the reality of the situation. And again, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but that really comes to head at the kind of climax and end of the book where he has to make some decisions and some choices.
Okay. Well, we don't want any spoilers because this is a spoiler-free zone here in the Blasters and Blades podcast. So, Nick, the next one is on you. Don't let him spoil it. Your job is to save him from himself.
Oh, that is way too much responsibility because I want the spoilers. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I do and I don't. We'll talk offline. Let me get done cracking myself up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your main character and what makes him unique in the in that environment, the fiction and science fiction fantasy. Well, it's not really science fiction. In the fantasy realm, forgive me. I've been drinking.
No worries, for sure. I've talked a lot about it, and just that Kellen is someone who, like, if he woke up and he had the choice to go to this strange new planet or stay in bed on Earth and live his kind of normal average life, at the start of the book, he would have been like, no, thank you. Close the magic portal. I'm not interested in that. Like, that doesn't sound safe. That definitely sounds like I could get
I don't
killed,
like my sister
right?
that much.
Exactly. But other than that, I think, like I said, I tried to mold him and mold him. We'll stick with mold. Tried to mold him a lot on like, what would like a younger Bilbo Baggins be like, right? In this same situation where he's kind of reluctant, he doesn't really believe in himself and his abilities. He thinks he's just a regular guy. And yet he's in an irregular situation where he's forced to rise above, right? And just how that realistically would look like. And some of the characters around him, again, a lot of people, the supporting cast, a lot of people felt that they were maybe a little unfair to him. But, like I said, this is kind of a harsh, dangerous, unfair world. And it's kind of, the sort of like, you're in the army now, kid, right? I know that resonates with you guys, or you get that, but kind of in a different sense. It's like, you're in a totally different world now, kid, right?
Yeah. Day one was like, I think I've made an egregious error.
Right. So it's like waking up to that without having made the choice to do it. So, that kind of adds it on. And then also going, okay, like, it's not just sink or swim for me, but like my little sister's here. And for reasons that we explain in the book, there's more to it behind, obviously, just a big brother wanting to look out for his little sister, right? And the other part to it is I wanted him to, the ultimate goal is for him to, become confident, come into his own over the course of the series. But I didn't want that change to happen all in one book. And even in the second book, which is going to be coming out in a few months, I'm just doing Kickstarter fulfillment for it right now. Even in the second book, he's kind of struggling with some of the same things. So there's definitely character growth, but it's not like an instantaneous where by the end of this book, he goes from like kind of fresh faced kid off the farm to, oh, I'm like Clint Eastwood with magical powers and a giant cat that will eat you, right?
I would freak out. I would 100% misuse my powers.
Yeah. I'd be like that kid with the little red, was it Red Ryder BB gun? I'd shoot my eye out the first time I got like the lightsaber. It'd be over.
The cat would take my arm, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to, I need to give Vex some credit too. Vex is his companion, and he is named aptly, I guess you could say. So Kellen is the main character, but like Vex is basically like a part of Kellen, right? And that comes to play in the story is kind of the decisions Kellen's making that influence Vex. And Vex is almost like the opposite of Kellen, or like the mirror image of him, right? When you look in where he's not the mirror image, but the opposite, right? Where he's adventurous and outgoing, and he doesn't worry about things, and he's not afraid to have fun, just in kind of a strange, dangerous world. And was really the funnest thing to write, was just the interaction between those two, and kind of how they end up balancing each other out, but also learning and growing together.
So let's look into that. So is Vex the foil for the main character? Is he literally part of him, like his inner beast kind of thing? Is it a separate entity with its own consciousness? Can you sort of, because I'm a little confused on the role that the cat plays in the larger scale.
Read the book, JR.
Well, I'm going to do that too. I've got a copy already. I got it.
I don't have a copy. That's all I'm saying.
Because he likes me better than you.
Well, I mean, you haven't read it yet, so I'm gonna. You lost your privileges. You need to mail your book to me.
I was too busy drooling over Springs and Spears and Astrid. All right, look, it's just not my fault.
Cut out the middle, man. You just mail it directly to me. I'll read it.
It's not my fault. You write so many awesome stuffs that I can only do so much at a time. All right.
No, I like supporting the cause. Tell me where I can contribute. So I'll drop.
Speaking of supporting the cause. I'm going to pause for a moment before we talk about his secondary characters, and remind you that Derek and Katie both are known for selling direct, so they sell on their website. And if you really want to support authors, and not just these two, but anyone who offers that option, when you buy direct from the authors, from the comic book creators, they get a larger cut of the pie. So you are doing a lot more to help the bottom line and give them the breathing room to make more content for you. It's great that you can get it on Amazon. It's even cooler when you can get it at Barnes & Noble and all the other places. But when you buy it direct from the author, that can be life-changing for an author. And I mean, sometimes it goes from the difference of getting 70% to getting 90% of the profit, which means your ROI, your return on investment's a lot quicker, and you can take more chances. So we will link this in the show notes for you to give it a shot yourself. But I will not be linking it to Amazon this time. We will link directly to Derek's website where he sells.
Straight up
and
to
we
my
encourage
boy.
you to. Yeah, we encourage you to do the same thing. And if Nick's comics that he's talked about recently intrigue you, do the same thing. Buy it from his website. Don't buy it, from the other vendors. Buy directly from the authors where you can. All right. With that being said, Derek, would you consider the Vex a secondary character? Like, what's the relationship with the cat and the main character? And like, are they separate? Can you elaborate?
Right. So when Vex wakes up when Kellen wakes up in Oris, that's the name of the world, like Vex is there, and Vex really, and this is explored in the start of the story and throughout it, but Vex is like, he has his own mind. They kind of share some thoughts, not really telepathic. Vex can talk out loud, but they're really like, their own distinct individuals, but they've also influenced one another in just the fact that they're here right in this world. So Vex kind of pops into existence when Kellen wakes up in this world. And really, a lot of it is about uncovering their relationship with one another. But, Vex is also figuring out, he's like, one of the lines he says is, I waited a long time for you to be here. And he's like, well, like, were you alive before then? And there's kind of some dialogue where he's like, no, I just like existed, and I know I've been waiting for you, and kind of now you're here, right? It's kind of like the magical familiar version of like the stork dropping the baby, except instead of a baby, it's kind of like this alter ego version of yourself that also has its own magical powers and has given you magical powers. So there's a lot of play back and forth between them throughout the course of the story. A lot of fun banter, kind of there's definitely a buddy element there to it, but also kind of a little bit of a deeper, I don't want to call it an exploration because it's really not that serious, I guess you could say, but there's definitely a look into, Vex is like I came into existence because you came into this world, and Kellen's focus is 1, finding his sister, and 2, getting them both back home. And so there's kind of a contrast there where Vec's like, well, I'm not sure I'll exist if you don't live here anymore, right? Or if you don't exist in this world, what does that kind of mean for me and in my existence, right? So that was a really deep way to say, Vex is definitely comedic relief at a lot of the times, and there's definitely a lot of buddy elements in the story, and just kind of the training montage of both of them learning to grow into their individual magical powers, but also kind of how they work together to do some kind of cool combination magic stuff in fighting.
Yeah, when hearing you describe Vex, like I know when I read this, Vex is going to be voiced inside my head by James Earl Jones.
He's more like
or oh my god, why am I?
It's funny you say that.
Morgan Freeman, maybe. Or
yeah, I'm actually getting. Have you seen the movie Nick in the Army Now?
Oh, the drill sergeant.
Pauly Shore. No, I'm picturing Pauly Shore. Was that our truck drill sergeant? Like I'm picturing that vibe for Vex.
Vex is definitely more Jonathan Taylor Thomas is Simba than he is James Earl Jones as Mufasa. So
no,
okay.
Now the voice I didn't specify because there's Vader, there's Mufasa. I'm thinking the blind guy from The Sandlot. The way he said it's like, George signed this. I stand corrected. You're dead where you stand. You know that comedic, lighthearted version of James Earl Jones.
This is
so. I'm still reading it in that voice. I don't care what y'all say.
Okay.
But I'll give it a second read through with the other voices.
So Katie read the A Spring for Spears for the audience in her narration. Did you narrate Beast Mage?
I did not. I was actually, you must have been reading my mind, JR, because I was totally going to give a plug for my narrator right here. I was super fortunate. His schedule is insanely busy now, and I don't think he's taking on new authors, as far as I'm aware. But I was lucky enough to work with Travis Baldry to do the narration for this, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Travis is good.
I knew before I had even written the book that I wanted Travis to narrate it, right? So like as I'm going through and I'm writing the draft and I'm revising the second and third draft, like I'm doing it thinking about Travis writing and revising this. And if you've heard Travis do anything, I mean, he could like read the phone book for people that still know what a phone book is.
Make it sound entertaining. Yeah.
Travis is awesome. And I was really fortunate to work with him on this project and to be able to work with him on this series, but also knowing kind of in advance, another inspiration for this was, if you're familiar with Will White's Cradle series, this was kind of like Digimon meets Cradle, but set in a pre-Columbian world instead of an Asian-inspired world. So just knowing that as I was writing it and knowing that Travis was going to narrate it and some of the voices he was doing, he really knocks it out of the park on this one. There's no way, even if I had wanted to narrate it, that I could have came anywhere as close as he does with this. And yeah, he's incredible. If you are all able to, I would suggest getting the audiobook version over the paperback or ebook, just to hear Travis really bring this story to life and give it a totally additional element.
Dig it.
Okay.
All right. Well, hey, let's move on to the bad guys, the antagonist, the ones that challenge our hero. What are the antagonists? Is it man versus environment? Like, what do we got going on here?
So it's a little bit of both, you could say. Like I mentioned, there was definitely some influence from like just the man versus nature that you find in My Side of the Mountain or Hatchet or any of Jack London's stuff. And I explained some of the environmental concerns and flora and fauna that come after Kellen and Vex in the story. And then there's also the main villain or bad guy. His name is Ubira, and he's got he's kind of a cool villain. And the reason I'm stuttering with this is I'm trying not to spoil too much about him.
I'm a big fan of spoilers, darling. Don't tell no spoilers.
It's kind of interesting in that the main antagonist has more interactions with Kellen's sister, and we get a few chapters from her point of view than he actually does with Kellen. And also the Ubira, the main antagonist, there's an ally character that's with Kellen that's has some point of view chapters in the second book and plays a main role. Her name is Shawnee, where there's some things that Ubira has done that kind of impact her. And so really what the setting is Allison kind of pops into this world and has the misfortune to basically land right in with Ubira and his gang of miscreants and bad guys. They're kind of a group of slavers, and they're just really not good people. But there's also some deeper motives that they have going on. And then Kellen pops into this world and teams up with this tribe of warriors that's going after Ubira and trying to rescue some of the people that he had kidnapped. And so you have this kind of chase story going on as well. And then also the man versus nature that you're dealing with. So there's a really cool antagonist. There's an awesome battle at the end. I think I can say that without there being any spoilers. But also a lot of just nature challenges along the way, and a lot of interactions between Kellen and the group he's with. Again, I explained they're kind of a hardened group of mostly ladies that he's with, and they're kind of like, pretty hardcore warrior women. And so him just learning to exist in this new world, it's sometimes some of them are almost antagonistic forces, or they're the ally in the sense of the ally that moves the plot along, not necessarily the ally that's going to tuck you into bed at night and tell you that everything's going to be okay.
Because it's not going to be okay. You got some stuff ahead of you, bro.
Right.
To quote my grandmother, nobody promised you a rose garden.
Exactly.
Those old German women, they had no F's to give. I'm just saying.
They had zero chill, bro. Zero
chill. Zero chill.
My Irish grandmother was the same way.
All right, Nick, it's your favoriteest question, the one you insisted we put in there. So are you ready for this?
Dude. Yeah, I do. Okay, so you've mentioned these amazing characters and secondary characters, all right? So picture this. You're in a back alley. You run into all of them at the end. You can't go anywhere. It's either you or them. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to beat your ass, or are they going to give you a hug? After the hell you've put them through.
After the hell I've put them through, I would say if I ran into Kellen within the first week of him being there, he'd probably, I think I'd have a good chance of fighting him off, right?
Kick him in the knee.
It's not that he's soft. He's just, I take my chances on bull rushing him and getting myself out of that alleyway. But if we're getting teamed up with Kellen and company, the rest of the crew that's with him, they'd probably beat me up just because, even aside from what I did to them. But knowing what I did to them, I don't like my chances at all. My chances of survival are nil.
Oh yeah, go back to my interview with my characters. Yeah, I was dead. I was dead where I stood.
Yeah, but you write superheroes, so it makes it a little bit different.
Yeah, but even the hero wanted to kick my ass.
This is true. I mean, but you kind of had it coming. So
that's
both
true.
of you.
I did. I mean,
just knowing what you did before Astrid, I know that you probably weren't any better to these people. You're horrible, rotten, no good day to them.
Everybody gets the same treatment. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Exactly. Yep.
So
that is a good point, JR, in that I don't know I'm not sure who had it worse, Kellen or Astrid. Probably Kellen. So I'll set the stage for you there. That if I had to pick one of them to go through what they went, I don't think I would.
I gotta read this book.
I'd probably go with Astrid over Kellen, but it's a close one.
You're saying Kellen over Astrid as far as like parental tough love?
Yeah,
like
I had it worse.
Beating his ass.
Sure.
All right, I got to read this book. You guys need to read this book because Astrid, holy crap. Yeah. Oh my God.
So this is clearly part of a series, because I know when we were doing the prep for the show, you accidentally gave me book 2's cover. In fact, let me go ahead and show that, because it's glorious as well, because that just released.
Glory.
Storm Totem. And the kid looks even cooler. Yeah, that's fact.
That is this, without any spoilers, that is the same beast companion, but obviously he looks different. So yeah, I really think
somebody evolved.
What was that? Sorry.
Somebody got the XP to evolve.
Yep, he got some XP, and Kellen kind of, that was how we leveled him up too. I was like, my going back to the cover design for both of them, I'm like, okay, we're going for like kind of a, if I had played Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order, I totally would have been like, make him look like Cal Kestis, right? But my inspiration was actually like Tom Holland, and that's maybe the best way to describe Vex is like if Tom Holland was a magic fox / cat thing in this story, it would be Vex.
Well, what does the fox say?
Exactly.
No, that's a really cool cover too. We're still going to talk about this when we bring you back on to talk about book 2. We're going to talk about this. We'll get in depth on that cover. It's pretty awesome.
Speaking of book 2, so obviously we know there are 2 books out because we've seen the covers. Where do you see the series going? Is it done at a trilogy? Is it going to be like you're going to pull a George R. R. Martin, write like a dozen books and then leave us hanging? Like, where do you see the series going?
Well, like I mentioned before, I kind of already pulled the George R. R. Martin with Tudovar Saga, and then I'm like, I will finish it, but I kind of abandoned it, and I'm going to rewrite it. So I'm committed to, I'm working on the Wolfsong Saga with Katie right now, and then really my other big project is this one, is Mana Beast. So in the kind of the number I have in my head, and I've done some outlining and kind of getting the big picture in mind, I'm looking at probably 7 books total. I know it won't go over 7. It may end up being, 6, but kind of 7's the cap on this. I'm really looking at with the other projects I have, trying to work on 1 a year for this. So Storm Totem, like I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Kickstarter for it ended the end of February, and that's kind of how I've been launching these books. So if you supported the Kickstarter and you're listening to this, thank you so much. You're amazing. If you didn't, and you still want to check it out, thank you for being amazing, but you're probably going to have to wait till September for the regular release, because I make sure the Kickstarter crew gets about a 3-month head start to read it and check everything out. But I am, like I mentioned before, I'm working on Sword Summer right now, which is the 2nd book in the series I've written with Katie, the Wolfsong Saga. And once I get through that, and probably the outline for the 3rd book in the Wolfsong Saga, I'll start on book 3 for Mana Beasts. So trying to keep them, clipping right along at a pretty decent pace. Definitely a lot of, I've never done a 7-book series before, so this will be interesting. My biggest is a trilogy. So it's definitely a lot of crossing your I's and dotting your T's and all that, just to
keep a continuity.
Right.
Remembering what you wrote previously, so you don't break the world. Essentially.
Exactly. The continuity.
Fans always pick at that stuff up.
I'm gonna definitely have to go back.
Oh, there are rules lawyers in every fandom.
Kind of organizing my notes and things, but it's been a fun challenge to really have an epic scope like this. The books are decent sized. Storm Totem a little smaller than Beast Mage, but we're still talking about. I think Beast Mage was 115,000 words, so still that's bigger than The Hobbit, and Storm Totem is about the same size as The Hobbit as far as word count goes. So I mean, they're pretty decent. They're not like a doorstop, but enough that they're still fast paced and you can read them. But there's a lot going on for sure.
I would love to see this be like made into a series, like as far as like a streaming service. But I know Hollywood will just screw up the essence of the books.
This is one. Of all my other series, Gin Tamer. Again, it's set in a modern world, and it was really kind of inspired by how we would do Pokemon, but also addressing some of the weird continuity issues that they just ignore in it, right? And it would be one that I would really love. Gin is in, we took it from Gin as in genie, as in Ginny, however you spell it, but really that was our name for the magical creatures in the world.
I dig it.
But really both Beast Mage and Mana Beast, the series, and Gin Tamer, the series, again, that they're both kind of in that monster taming realm. Both of them I would love to see as an anime or, a graphic novel someday. I think there's a really cool potential to do a crossover there, and I would love to work with someone on that someday for that. So definitely, writing these as a full-length novel, and that's my main focus, but I would also love to adapt both of those into different formats.
Different mediums?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because
you
all the stuff
mentioned
you've created so far has
the
been like could transition well. I'm sorry, Jared, I didn't mean to step on you. Those could transition well. I mean, you've got unique takes on not only the genre but the tropes within the genre. So, like, I don't know why Hollywood's not knocking down your door right now wanting to buy rights to it.
Right. I'm expecting the call any day.
I'm gonna go find a
but
lamp and
speaking of
let me get a gin.
that would be nice. Although they always mess your wishes up, so you'd have to be really creative, get all lawyery on the wording.
Right.
Ooh, lawyeries on the gin. That'd be
But
funny. That's yeah.
yeah, so you mentioned the mana is the magic system. What can you tell us about that? Is it just elemental magic? Can you elaborate on the magic system?
Right. So
Does it
it's
come in a blue goo?
It's the blue goo.
Okay.
Well, as you can see, Kellen's magic is based on sun mana, hence kind of the yellow glowy stuff that we see. There's
Okay.
also some storm mana that you can see going on in the background of this cover. So I wanted it to be elemental magic, but I wanted to get away from just kind of the traditional earth, water, fire, and wind. So there's still fire. Like I said, storm mana kind of encapsulates lightning and wind and that kind of thing. There's still water mana, there's earth mana, and then sun and shadow are kind of the other two, and there may be others.
Would you say that like the four elemental manas that are, earth, wind, fire, and water, they have their like little sub categories within each mana type thing?
I kind of I took out those subcategories. So, like I said, storm mana is kind of like wind and lightning and kind of combined,
Covers
and really
that
made
stuff.
it its own thing.
Okay.
But I should have said this way before. I'm a little rusty on my pitch again because I'm not in convention mode, right? I'm not used to hawking books at the con at this time of year. But
on the spot.
the other kind of one-liner for this is Digimon meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that kind of gives you an idea of the magic and how it works with people. And really, it's not just like, oh, these people can throw lightning at people and these people can make bright yellow glowing things. Like there's some complexities that we'll be getting into in books 2, but especially 3 and later on in the series about kind of the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of each type of magic. And also the thing that was cool for me to play with is like how having this magical companion augments what the human can do and vice versa. And really, you think of Digimon or Pokemon and it's sending your electric rat off to fight another magic animal. But in the mana beast world, the humans are right there fighting alongside them, right? So you got to do push-ups too. You can't just go out and level up your magical animal there. You got to be on your game too, because you're in the middle of the things and you're fighting alongside them.
Right. Yeah. Kind of off the wall question, because in a lot of like Digimon, Pokemon, there's the one that can kind of like the One Ring, the one that can control them all. Is there something like that going on in your series?
No, there isn't a one that can control them all, but without being too spoilery, you're challenging me again here. There's some instances where like I play with the ways that a person can form a bond with a mana beast. So without spoiling it, like you have people like Kellen who are called spirit travelers, right? They get dropped into Oris from Earth. And one thing we play with and we'll explore more in later books is that the timeline from Earth and the timeline in Oris don't necessarily line up. So there could be a potential for, like a conquistador type character that came from Earth to cross paths with Kellen, who is basically from modern Earth, right? So there's that aspect, but the other part of it is that not every person from Earth that ends up in Oris becomes a beast caller, which is the kind of the term for people that use magic and have these companions. And the people that are native to Oris, not all of them are born being a beast caller. So there's different ways it can happen, and I explore that in the series where sometimes it's a traumatic event. or sometimes it's just a big life-changing event that doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic. But
Right.
so it's not like, hey, you're born and here's your cute little pink platypus that's going to be your companion for the rest of your life, right?
There's no sorting hat for these types of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a random sorting hat in that it just, you can't control who it happens to or when it happens. It does follow bloodlines in some cases, but really it's the idea that there's not this group of people that are going to be this, right? Like without really spoiling anything, obviously Kellen, who is 19 years old, that's when he first forms his bond with Vex and meets Vex. There's another character later on that's a minor character. This isn't a spoiler, but she's around the age of like 6, and later on in the book, her companion kind of forms. So it can happen to anyone at any age, and that was kind of as I was developing the magic system, I wanted that to be part of the thing where it's not a special group of people, and it's not always the circumstances that lead your mana beast to manifesting, no pun intended, aren't always desirable things or things that you would be envious of a person that happened to.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'd get a platypus.
I could see it.
Creature. I mean, like, and he'd just be walking around bouncing an apple on his bill.
So of all the magical styles, all the different mana that you could get powers from, which one would you want to have control over?
Oh man, that's pretty tough. I mean, Kellen, we'll see more of this in book 2. He kind of gets a grasp of it and starts doing more cooler things in book 2. Part of the sun mana stuff is healing, mostly self-healing, not necessarily healing others. But I mean, that's pretty cool if you can heal yourself, right?
Better than a Band-Aid.
Right? Faster than a Band-Aid and cheaper too.
That's right.
I would say probably, some of the water mana is pretty cool. Just the things that you can do, just being able to manipulate water, pretty sweet. But probably storm mana would be the awesomest. Just being able to not necessarily fly, but kind of levitate and float around and do some cool stuff with that. And I mean, going back to the start of this, when we're talking about the Sith, like shooting lightning out of your hands is pretty freaking awesome, right? So I'd probably have to go with that one.
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's talk about how you create these magical creatures that you have going on in the world. Where'd you draw that inspiration from? Nightmares, psychedelics, spoiled water, I guess. I don't know.
Right. I wanted it to be just to give a sampling of some of the creatures in this world. We talked about the bear with kind of the big crystal spikes on his back, the size of a dump truck. I took inspiration from animals that exist in the Americas or existed in the Americas. There's definitely, just like there was a little bit of Ice Age flavoring in A Spring for Spears, there was a little bit of Ice Age flavoring, and again, that exploring that fauna from those periods that appear here. There's the bison are more like bison you'd see in the Ice Age, right? Where they're twice as big and have gigantic horns.
Just huge.
Right?
Massive.
And other than that, it's just really mixing and matching and animals anywhere. Real animals, animals that exist in mythology was a big inspiration. Just kind of, a big thing in I'm not an artist myself. I wish I was, but a big thing in the Pokemon and Digimon kind of fandom is people drawing fake versions of those creatures. And so basically just taking inspirations from any type of animal that I thought was cool, whether they were real or non-existent. So, we've got Vex, who kind of starts off as this, volleyball, football shaped kind of just fluffy little plush toy thing. Then obviously he grows and he has some different forms that he goes into. And then I mentioned the bear. Also, there's a coyote that has wings. And so it was mixing and matching animal parts and mythical creatures and just kind of throwing them all into the blender. And that's really one of the funnest things as I'm writing this series, coming up with, okay, I've got a new beast collar. what does their companion look like, and how is that influenced by what type of mana they use? And then also, as you get stronger as a beast caller, the humans, some of them develop different physical attributes. So there's some that may sprout some wings, kind of the running joke in book 2 that's not a spoiler is Kellen's like, I hope I don't wake up and I have like a horn coming out of the middle of my head or something, right? So there's a lot of magical and physical changes that can occur with the humans in addition to their creature companions, the mana beasts.
That could get awkward when it came to dating again. Poor guy. So have you got a plan on what's going to happen to him, or do you let the story sort of flow? Like, do you know, like you're already picturing a unicorn horn popping out of his forehead or something?
I've got some ideas. I don't want to spoil it, and I also don't want to, maybe raise expectations or dash them on either side of things. So, like I said, I have a pretty good game plan for where I want the story to go, and a few of the big twists that I have. A lot of it too is just speaking generally, is playing on mythology and oral history and recorded history and just how events get misremembered or miscommunicated and how that impacts things when, mythology is real, right? It's not just a case of over 1,000 years, this story got twisted. It's a case of over 1,000 years, this story got twisted, but there are actual gods and demigods in this world, and getting the story twisted is going to have a real impact for the mortals that live here.
Okay, so clearly this interview is winding down. We went a little bit long, but we were having fun. Nick and I both lost track of the questions a few times because we were just enjoying the show, which is always a good sign. But was there anything we didn't ask you about Beast Mage that you want to tell us before we wrap this show up?
No, I think we covered it. Again, if you love Avatar: The Last Airbender, not so much James Cameron's Avatar, though if you liked it, you might like this too. I mean, there's crossover there, but if you're an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan, if you're a Digimon or Pokemon fan or anyone from that realm, or you just like really cool magic systems and maybe a non-traditional epic fantasy setting, I really think you'd like this book. If you love audiobooks, definitely do yourself a favor and check it out. Travis Baldry is an amazing narrator. And yeah, we already mentioned you can check out all of my books at derekallensiddoway.com. Right now, that's exclusively where the Mana Beast series is being sold. I'll probably have a launch later on at the very end of this year to bring this to Amazon. But right now, it was kind of a side experiment to make Mana Beast a direct only thing. So to get it directly for me, and I appreciate the support for that for anyone that's willing to do that and go outside of the norms there. And yeah, I hope you'll check this out or some of my other books out. And if you've already read some of my stuff, just want to give you a thank you for your support. And yeah, you're awesome. That's what I do this for, is for the readers.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. And we'll definitely have to make sure those links are in the show notes. So scroll down, dear listener, and you will find what you seek. And so before we wrap this up, I would like to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part, people. Now, do you have a functionality on your website where people can review it there?
It is on Goodreads. So I would point people, I would absolutely love for you to go on Goodreads and leave a review there. And then as I launch on, Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, some of the main platforms, again, closer to the end of this year, of course, any reviews anywhere are appreciated. Or if that's even just you telling a friend or a family member or someone on the street randomly who you think might enjoy some of the things I talked about with Beast Mage, that's just as good as a review for me, just pointing someone else to the book that might like it.
All right. And as we bring this puppy to a close, Derek, can you tell listeners how they can find you? And we'll link that all in the show notes.
You can find me at derekallensiddoway.com, or if that's too long, you can also find me at the same website at dsid.com, a little bit shorter. You can see all my books and series there, including the ones I've co-written with Katie Cross, or the Gin Tamer series, which I co-wrote with AJ Cerna, as well as all my individual books. You can find my email there, Discord, plenty of ways to get in touch. I have a text line that I have a text community for. So I'd love to hear from you, however you want to reach out. And yeah, let's chat.
All right. And you can find us, dear listener, on the wild, wild interwebs. And let me tell you where we are. We are over on the Twitters at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. We have a Facebook page where all the shenanigans happen. We post book reviews, our episodes, and all the cool things. So check that out. We don't have a dedicated URL yet, but we're working on it. Doc's just been a little bit busy. You know, they don't want her to blow the lab up, so they kind of like it when she pays attention there. Weird how that works. Nick and I liked our job. They didn't care when we blew stuff up, but apparently
I wanted a
they get
T
little
virus.
wonky when you do that. Right? She
I
failed
wanted
us when she didn't give us that, but
3
we have
times.
a website at anchor.f. I know, right? Website at anchor.fm /blasters and tech blades. Again, anchor.fm /blasters -and-blades. Where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help support the show and help keep the lights on. These episodes aren't free to produce, and we appreciate every ounce of your funds that go towards that. We appreciate it. It's a labor of love for us. So we're glad when you join in on that party. But you could also support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com /author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com /author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put it in the comment section that it's for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, duly caffeinated. They will drink until their liver surrenders. And you know what? We really should find a coffee company to sponsor us because we all go through like a pot a day.
One pot? Those are
You think
rookie numbers,
we
man.
could do that? Like
you got to get those numbers up, bro.
I mean, we
pots,
can't all
minimum.
be cool like you. We have livers we don't want to lose. So
It's a liver. It grows.
all right.
back.
Well, we appreciate you coming. Oh, that's true. Anyway, we do appreciate you coming back, Derek. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us, dear listener, dear viewer. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And that's a